Good morning, everyone. I'd like us to, before I give my keynote address, to observe a moment of silence because we've just received some very sad news on the passing of one of the stalwarts on this continent, a former prime minister in this country, and also a champion in the affordable housing space, His Excellency the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. So it is shocking news. I got it a little while I was on the way. So I'd just like us to stand up and just observe a moment of silence. We may be seated. May his soul rest in peace. The AUHF chairman and also the CEO of the Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company, the AUHF treasurer, my very good friend Joe Oltetia, and CEO of the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, AUHF member CEOs, development partners, private sector investors, CAHF and Convergence colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to speak at the Africa Union for Housing Finance 41st Annual Conference at a time when the need for affordable housing across Africa, and in particular here in Kenya, has never been more urgent. Allow me to commend the Center for Affordable Housing Finance and my very good friend Keisha and Convergence for launching the playbook of blended finance in affordable housing in Africa, and to the IDRC and Standard Bank for making it possible. This is a timely tool that will guide the adoption of blended finance in affordable housing programs across the continent and help address the challenges of informal settlements, insecure tenure, and inadequate housing. We also extend our gratitude to the AUHF leadership and all partners here today for your continued commitment to making accessible housing a reality by creating this platform for exchanging of ideas, strategies, and investments. Distinguished delegates, Kenya is experiencing rapid urbanization that continues to put pressure on our housing sector. Just to share some numbers, our urbanization rate is somewhere between 4 and 5%. That means that every year we have 500,000 people that are moving from the rural areas and moving to the urban areas. And that is not theory, it is a reality. And this phenomenon of urbanization is here with us. And we keep on saying that the future is urban. The question is, what kind of urban areas are we going to have? And I think that is really the call here today. And we can debate, and it's good. First of all, I feel very happy because I'm in very good company. Sometimes they call me the PS for private sector here in Kenya because I'm a private sector person. It is good to have this kind of forums and where we can speak openly. But the one thing that I know is that we cannot continue to bury our heads in the sand and say we don't have a problem. We have a problem. And we have a problem when 65 to 70% of your urban population lives in slums. You have a problem. And it is not getting better. So we can raise our hands in the air and say, it's not my problem, and leave it to the next generation. And soon, even those posh suburbs, the Karens of this world, the Mutaigas of this world, are all going to become slums. Because the slum phenomenon just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And when you look at what's happening in Kenya, you can extrapolate that to any part of this continent. Here in Kenya, majority of the working population earn very low wages. They do. And that is not about to change, because we've not been bequeathed as a country with a lot of natural resources. In fact, we don't have any major natural resources, so to speak of. You also have another phenomenon that is happening, that land has become extremely expensive. Here in Upper Hill, where we are here, the other day, and I don't know, Joe can convert this quickly in dollars for me. He's a numbers guy, so I'm sure it's not a very difficult task. Here in Upper Hill, an acre of land was sold for 1.2 billion Kenya shillings. 1.2 billion Kenya shillings for an acre of land. And so you have the statistics that I have. I don't have the latest statistics. I've asked Keisha and her team, and they're working with us, and they're helping us so that we can be able to get some of these numbers right. But here in Kenya, as of 2019, 75% of all payslip carrying Kenyans, payslip, so these are formal people, formal income, and 50,000 shillings and below. Now, what is 50,000 shillings and below? I don't know, Joe, whether you're crunching those numbers, but it is certainly less than $500 a month. Yes, no? Yeah. It is less than $500 a month. That is 75% of payslip carrying Kenyans. Now, here is the interesting statistics. The ratio of formal income to informal income in Kenya is about 3 million to 17 million. 3 million formal, 17 million informal. So I know there are financiers here, Joe being one of them, and they'll tell you it is much harder to finance someone who has no formal income. How do you verify their income? Some of them, it's lumpy cash flows. So 17 million out of 20 million working people, if there is no intervention, they have very little hope of ever owning a home. And majority of them will form a SACCO, when we want to really applaud the SACCOs because they have been a great source of housing in Kenya. But it takes a long time. I was born in an informal settlement in a town in Kenya called Nakuru. My dad was a civil servant earning 6,500 shillings a month. My dad started building a home in Bahati, Nakuru, and unfortunately passed away, never seen that house completed. After 9 years, saving, buying land through a SACCO, repaying it slowly, and then go to the SACCO and ask for additional money to put up the top structure. And that is the story of most Kenyans and perhaps most people in Africa. So we may disagree how to fix the problem, but we can't run away from the fact that we have actually a systemic failure And I know because I've been, some of my friends who are in this room here, we've had very heated debates. Why is government getting involved in housing? Leave housing to the private sector. And I've been saying, no, this is not a private sector versus public sector. It is not. This is us all putting our heads together and saying, we have a problem. And some of these problems are decade long, almost, here, almost 60 years in the making. So, let's go back to the urbanization. So I've told you that you have an economy that is largely informal. You have 500,000 people moving to the urban areas every year. We have 800,000 young people joining the job market. What kind of job market are they joining after graduation? There's no magic wand there. There's nothing, there's no silver bullet. The economy is the same. So as they graduate, what kind of job market are they joining? It is the job market where only 15% of the jobs are formal. So, you can pray about it, you can cast demons, you can lay hands on it, the problem will not run away. You need bold, unpopular decisions to be made. And nobody's going to thank us. I mean, we've taken body blows. I hardly come for conferences. I don't go on TV. Even social media, I had to run away a bit. Here in Kenya, we have a very, very vibrant social media. They can character develop you. And I thought, as a private sector guy, I'll engage them. And I used to engage them, and when you give them facts, they hit you below the belt. They'll often tell me, unfat, because I used to be very big. So I unfatted. So nowadays I told them, so I unfatted. Then I used to stand and sweat. And some people say, no, it's not sweating, it is perspiring. I don't know what is the difference. But it's not about making popular decisions, it's about making the right decision. Because to fix a systemic failure, first of all, it requires a lot of money. And housing is not cheap. You know that, because I'm talking to people in that sector. It's not cheap. So we have 500,000 people moving to urban areas. You have a job market whose dichotomy is 15% formal, 85% informal. You have very expensive land. There's a professor in a university in California that did a lot of studies and showed that where you have got people with very low income and very expensive land, automatically the system pushes the people out. Yes, no? Absolutely. And I hope I'm not going to lose you. I don't do very well reading written notes, but I also become very indisciplined. So, because I have this, what is called the everlasting gospel. I used to be a preacher. So Joe will be my timekeeper. Okay, but this is I'm in my element. This is the right place for me to be in. So thank you for the invite once again. So, I've heard someone saying, preach it. Okay, so I'm going to preach. And I'll do an altar call later. I see how many are converted into this good gospel of affordable housing. So, I was saying that you have this phenomenon where you have got very low wages, which you can do very little about. As a country, we try and set up minimum wage. Most of you are employers here. And you know, if as government, we become unreasonable and we set up a minimum wage that is beyond your affordability, what are you going to do? You'll lay off people or you'll shut down. That's the truth. So the inverse of what you're trying to do actually happens. So you have expensive land, you have low wages that you can do very little about, and the system automatically starts to push people out. But where do they go to? Where are they going to go to? No. There's a lot of land in the outskirts of Nairobi, Athi River. That is true. But you have another challenge. You have unreliable and unaffordable public transport system that also requires a lot of money to fix. So, ordinarily, if the public transport system was working, then yes, people will move to this place because land is cheaper than in the core, right? I hope I'm not losing you, right? Because I really want to carry you along. So where land is cheaper, it is inaccessible. And remember, the people you're solving for are the ones that have got low wages. So it is a catch-22. They need to be closer to where they work so that they can keep their cost of transportation low. But where the work is, land is very expensive and there is not just enough houses for them. So where will they go? Ladies and gentlemen, that is how slums form. They can put it in many other words, but that is how informal settlements come up. Because the system is pushing them out. There is no reliable public transport system. So they will occupy any land that is free. Now, part of my docket, so I want to say that I'm speaking from a position of knowledge and maybe authority. One of my biggest headaches, because it is a docket under me, is called slum eradication and slum upgrading. Because it's not theory, whether they exist or not. You know, some of you can theorize the whole day, and when you take me on, you speak from a position of, perfect. I wake up to the imperfect world, knowing that I have a responsibility of solving it, or at least starting to solve it. Now, slum upgrading is very difficult. And the money to do slum upgrading largely comes from our development partners. I don't know whether the World Bank is here. Is the World Bank here? Okay. And the AFD? Joe, you need to also invite next time development partners. They have good money for you. In fact, they funded you. AFD is here? AFDB? Okay. Is it Babati here? Or who is here from AFDB? Okay, Babati is here. So I've got good friends in that space. So we get money to do slum upgrading. We'll get it from the development partners. But it is not easy money. It comes with a lot of conditions. And one of the conditions is that you cannot use that money to upgrade an informal settlement that is built on private land. Now, here is some shocking news. For those of you who are from Kenya, Kiambu County, which is here in the Nairobi metropolitan, has many slums, as most of you will know that. Majority of the slums in Kiambu are on private land. Then I have a county in Homa Bay. Okay, and if you compare the population of Kiambu and Homa Bay, it is a couple of multiples. Homa Bay is much smaller. The slums in Homa Bay are largely on public land, on government land. So when I get the money from the World Bank and I parcel it out, Kiambu gets very little money because their slums are on private land. Kiambu gets less than 1 billion shillings when Homa Bay gets over 1 billion shillings. And why is that the case? It's a case because, can you imagine what message you'll be passing out there? No, just go occupy any land that you find, private or whatever. We will come and provide services to you. Or maybe I should just continue reading the speech, right? Are we together? All right? So that's the message that you'll be passing. So majority of the slums are actually on private land. When you look at our subnationals, the counties, who are tasked with the responsibility of providing, basic services, water, sewer, the same challenge they face. How do they provide basic services in a slum that is sitting on private land? Can you see the conundrum? So, essentially, the people who are on those slums are left to their own elements. They're left to their own elements. And what are these elements? It is the worst form of indignity. It's the worst form of indignity. Because they don't have sanitation. Sanitation is being provided by someone who charges you to use a toilet. Can you imagine being charged to use a toilet? I mean, you don't have the comfort of maybe 5 toilets in your own home, so you've never thought about it. You have one called a cloakroom. You have an ensuite in every bedroom. So that's not, that is the reality. So the same poor person that has got to go and live in these 3x3 shack, and they eat what they kill that day. That's what they do. They eat what they make on that day. And after eating, they have to sit back and say, whoa, there is another cost coming. It sounds like a joke. Because thank you. Because the water is not being provided by the city council or the county of Nairobi. But they need water. So where do you think water comes from? Hey, maybe some of you are suppliers of water. We call them the water barons in the slum. It's very lucrative business. So the same poor person who has very low wages has to pay 172% more for water than you and I. 172% more for water, and it's take it or leave it. And they have got to they have jerry cans where they have to store, and they have to store that water in the same 3x3 where they're living 9 of them. Are we together? I'll come to the financing part, which I'm sure you're all looking forward to, so please relax. Joe will have to keep me honest on the time. So also don't get carried away with the story and then you forget that there are other speakers to come. So, for electricity, it's an illegal connection. It's an illegal connection. And what they are charged is somewhere between 45 and 142% for electricity than you and I pay to Kenya Power. So here you have a very poor person and life just decides to punish you more. That is what is in our informal settlements. So please don't tell me, no, who doesn't have a home? Who doesn't have a home? When it rains, you have to play hide and seek with the rain and change the bed from this position to that because it's leaking. And when you get outside, you're jumping over sewage. And they have no schools. They have no hospital. And so that is what we have to solve for. And it doesn't matter. There is no self-respecting country that can sit back and say, no. That is not my problem. Those people did not apply to be born in a slum. And neither did you apply to be born where you were born. So you just need to thank God. But it's not that it's your good deeds. And 70% of our people live like that. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem to fix. And our land is not expanding, but our population is expanding. So we have a constant. And our land is not getting cheaper, it's getting more expensive. So today, we think we have a problem. What do you think is going to be in 10 years' time? Here in Upper Hill, because I did the valuation role for Nairobi County. In 1980, an acre of land here in Upper Hill was 40,000 shillings. 40,000 in the 80s. 30, 40 years down the road, it is 1.2 billion. And there's absolutely not much. When you try and look at what is this that is driving the value? Speculation. There's a lot of, cleaning money using all these lands. We all know, it is the truth. So that is not going to change. So ladies and gentlemen, that is what we face. So the question is, how do you fix that? How do you fix that? And I don't think there is one right answer. And that's why I'm happy to have this debate. But it requires bold leadership. And as I said, it's a problem that requires a lot of money. And that money, when you go to the private sector, I am a banker, so I know one or two things about money. And money is not emotional. You not hear money saying, those people, the penalty of poverty, so we are good. No. The owners of capital are looking for a return. And that's why I'm very happy that the theme here you're talking about is blended finance. Because we have got to look for all type of money and throw at the problem and fix it. And as imperfect as it is, because it is not perfect, at least you're doing something about it. I think that is what is very important. As imperfect as our affordable housing program is, and as much as there's a lot of room for improvement, we have moved out of boardrooms, we have moved out of PowerPoint presentation, we are doing it. As I sit here today, we have got 247,000 units that are under construction in every town in this country. Courtesy of Kenyans who put the housing fund together. So maybe if you're not from Kenya, if you go back, I don't know whether they require you to put a memo on what did you learn so that they can allow you to travel next time. Tell them the biggest lesson that I learned at the 41st AUHF conference is that hire our investment banker as your PS for housing. Because it's a structuring issue. So ladies and gentlemen, This is the challenge that we face. And so, what are we solving for? You know, it would have been much easier had I been given a task and told, solve for the payslip carrying Kenyans. Because I can call a few banks and you say, you know what, at least you can take a view on the, on the payslip, on the employer, and so on and so forth. I am solving for everyone. Now, one last interesting statistics that I don't think most of you know. But because you're in real estate and I see my friend Gekonyo there, whom we've had a lot of interesting conversation around this, he will tell you, or maybe he even he doesn't know, the area with the best returns, the best yield. Bwana Gekonyo, where is it? There you go. I mean, you're finance people, right? And developers. So you know how to calculate yield, right? So yield is what? Income over the cost, isn't it? Simple. So, that shack in the slum, in Mukuru here, that shack, in 2019, when we did the study, the income, the rental, was 2,500 to 3,000 shillings. This is a shack that has been built for less than 50,000 shillings. Okay? For less than 50,000 shillings. When you do your maths, the yield is over 60%. Where else will you ever get that kind of yield? Where? You'll be lucky to get 6-7%, isn't it? Are there rental people here? Right? I mean, the average in Nairobi, I think it's 6-7%, Joe. In the slum, it is 60 to 70% yield. So it is lucrative business out there. So the challenge then that we face, because we can't do much about the income, at least not now. We can do it progressively, but we have to fix the problem today, right? So I have a challenge where I need to fix for someone who is paying rental in a slum for 3,000 shillings. 3,000 shillings. So how do you do that? So my challenge was coming from the known back to the unknown. Because the known, I know. Whatever housing we are providing cannot be for more than 3,000 shillings. Because otherwise it is not affordable. So, and you have got all these other costs, again, that you cannot do much about them. You can't do much about the cost of land. You can't do much about the cost of construction. You can't do much about the cost of processes and approvals and all those things because they cost money. You know, and then of course you can't do much about the cost of financing on the buyer side. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is what we embarked on. And I can tell you, because it is again not a story, as I sit here with you today, the first lot of people that we have moved from informal settlement in Mukuru, living in their own home, having running water, electricity, piped gas, high-speed fiber internet connection, are paying 2,800 shillings for a home they will own. Ladies and gentlemen, that is transformation. And it has taken many hours of solving for the unknown. Part of it as a nation, and I know this debate has been there, is about the cost of land. And so government is the holder of land on behalf of the people. So we've decided that we are going to release that land at no cost, Because in Kenya, I can see Keisha standing, so I think maybe you're the timekeeper. In Kenya, the cost of land, as opposed to other places, is about 30%. Keisha, that's your statistic. And I read them very well, and I quote them, and I think you've done a phenomenal job. And I think it is your study that showed that Nairobi now has the most expensive land in the continent of Africa. So I hope it is still there. Well, I don't want to say I hope, but I quote that statistic, so I hope I am right. I haven't seen the latest one though. So the cost of land vis-a-vis the overall cost of the development in Kenya, in Nairobi, was found to be somewhere between 26 and 30%. So by government zero rating the land, you've already done away with a huge cost of that unit. Of course, cost of construction, we have a long way to go in fixing the cost of construction. Because if you can't do anything about the cost of power, power in Kenya is very expensive. It makes us very uncompetitive, even amongst our neighbors. So cost of power is high. We're trying to do something about it. But also there is a lot of taxation. Taxation, in fact, sometimes we even tax raw material. So we are trying to fix that whole tax regime. But as part of the program, we have zero rated some of the costs, like the input cost on VAT. Because you know, you're in the real estate, that when you build a house and you sell it, there is no output VAT. Is that correct? The realtors that are here, the developers who are here. When you sell the house, there is no VAT. And where you have no output VAT, but you have an input VAT, what happens? You can't offset. So it becomes a cost, a direct cost. So by taking away VAT, we have actually lowered the cost of construction by a good 9%. We have forgone other revenues like approval for NEMA, for what do you call them? These people, National Construction Authority. And some of the counties, we have signed MOUs with them so that they don't charge the development fees, all in the name of trying to lower the cost. And then finally comes the elephant in the room. Because all those efforts, what they've done, again, there was the study that we did with the World Bank in 2017. It's titled Unaffordable and Unavailable. Fantastic study about the housing in Kenya. I would really ask that if you want to be a commentator on housing in Kenya, please read that study, because they did a fantastic job. And what they showed is that the average cost of a house in Nairobi in 2017 was 11 million shillings. 11 million. Now, 11 million, if you go to a bank today and get a mortgage at, say, 15% and interest rate and 15 years, and you hardly get 15 years until Joe came along, right? What is the repayments a month? It's about 147,000 shillings. Now, do you know how many Kenyans earn 147,000 a month? 3%. 3. According to Kenya's Bureau of Statistics. I don't know whether it is the latest, but that is a study, that's a figure I have for 2019. So, Kenyans earning 150,000 and above are only 3%. And that is earning. But the cost of the cheapest available housing was 11 million, meaning that it is 147,000. So it means it's not even the 3% that can afford. It's less than the 3% that can afford, right? Because you don't spend all your money on the mortgage. I hope we are together. And that is why we needed the KMRCs of this world to come and provide patient capital, long-term capital at low interest rates. And so I want to congratulate Joe for what you've done with KMRC. And I'm a very great supporter of KMRC. And I'm happy that phase 2 has been approved. And so we will work together so that we can be able to accelerate. Because that is really where the challenge lies. So, ladies and gentlemen, That is the story of Kenya affordable housing. We are writing it every day. It is evolving right here. Someone has sued me. You know, Kenyans, we love suing. We even sue on behalf of others. You don't want to go, I'll sue on your behalf. So people sue, we love suing. So I've been sued by someone, and they said in the lawsuit that I am implementing affordable housing, which is not what is in the Constitution. Because the Constitution, Article 43, talks about adequate housing. That is how pedantic we can be. Okay? All right? Now, there is nowhere where we have defined adequate housing. Adequate housing is actually defined by the UN Habitat, because we have signed, we are member states, and we have signed a charter which is called the adequate housing. And so adequate housing is not just about 4 walls and a roof. Because if it was about 4 walls and a roof, even that 3x3 shack will be a house. And so when people say, who doesn't have their home? Why is Hinga busy taxing us to provide homes? We don't want homes. We all have a home. So adequate housing also talks about social amenities that makes human settlement workable. That's why we're building schools. Because actually slums also form because there's lack of social amenities. Because they're not the same people who don't have money to pay for transport to go to work, also don't have money to pay for their kids to take a ride to school. So if they can't get a school nearby, where do you think they're going to go and settle? They'll settle where there is a school. Okay? So I hope you've learned something today. All right? So I'm delighted that after a lot of noise, a lot of scars and body blows and so on and so forth, the program has taken off. And the one thing that I want to assure Kenyans, because I could hear, and you know, especially at the beginning when you start, and this one sounded like it's conmanship game, you know, okay, you're taxing me and, you know, I have my own home, okay, but, okay, fine, you're promising me to get a home, but you're doing 200,000 units a year. We have like 20 million Kenyans. So when will I ever get a home? So I understand those kind of questions. And also, in the past, we in the public sector, what we've not done, even we've not covered ourselves in glory. So we get the citizens to give us their money, and then we don't become good stewards of the money. The money is lost in corruption. It's lost in a lot of, you know, wastage. So the last point I want to give you is in our program, we disempowered ourselves. And we said, how do we make sure that this shilling that has been given painfully by Kenyans, how does it go to its rightful purpose? And so we know that every time we design something as government, and Wanagikonyo there, when he designs same product, you know, mine is going to cost a few multiples more. So we call the private sector, we call the universities, we call the chapters, our Association of Architects, we call our IQSK, which is the quantity surveyors, and we call our IEK, and we call our National Construction Authority, and we called 4 universities. And we told them, can you design products? And can you work out what is the cost per square meter? And they did. And lo and behold, we were contracting at 55 to 60,000 per square meter. And it came down to 42,000 per square meter. And we put that in our tender documents, and we put a ceiling, and we said, listen, Mr. contractor, if you tender here and you're above 42,000 per square meter, you're out. And guess what? By disclosing the ceiling, so if you bid today and you bid at 42,000, what do you think is going to happen? You're likely to be the last person. Because nobody is going to come at exactly 42. So the people are sharpening their pencil, they're sharpening. Now we are contracting at 38,000 per square meter. That is somehow where the sweet number. Meaning that if I was contracting at 60,000 per square meter, I would have built less units. And finally, because of the scale that we are pushing, Kisha, I can see you on the corner of my eye. Because of the scale, this is the last point. I know I've said finally, just like other preachers, that is, in the preaching world, we say finally many times until there is a final. Finally, because of the scale, the total elevator demand in this country before the affordable housing program was 750 units a year. 750 for the entire market every year. With my first 3 rounds of bidding, and now I'm on the 6th, my first 3 rounds of bidding that took us to 100,000 units, the total elevator demand was 2,700. To be precise, 2,650 elevators. Then the conversation has changed. If the entire market was 750, and through a program, I am doing 2,650 a year, I went out and I called elevator manufacturers. And I said, I want us to have a conversation. Because I have a huge scale. And you're making these elevators in China. What will it take for you to come and make them here in Kenya? They said, can you guarantee me demand? I said, of course I can guarantee you demand. They said, can you give me captive power? Of course I can give you captive power. Can you give me an economic zone where I don't have to apply for all these taxes? Of course I can do that. They said, they guarantee me minimum of 300 units a year. And we're going to come and set up here in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, that conversation has left the boardroom. Next week, Tuesday, God willing, it will be in the papers. I am now going out to the market to invite elevator manufacturers to come and set up here. So those who say, oh, hang on a second, why are you doing housing? Focus on jobs. That's how jobs get created. Create a consumptive demand, which we have, solving a big problem, but then have the wisdom. Because it would have been very much easier for me to go and buy those elevators from China, and I'll get very good discounts. But we're investing in ourselves, because that elevator, whether they start with assembly and they start manufacturing certain components, those are better paying jobs that we are creating here for our engineers, the same ones that are coming out of universities. That's how you build a nation. So we are fixing almost half a century old problem. We are putting people into dignified homes, and we're investing in ourselves. So as you can see, this is everlasting gospel. So there's no more final. I'm very happy once again, and I think in the tradition, we are allowed to say now this conference is officially opened. Thank you so much.